In the early morning of April 1892, inside a wooden seaside hotel in Coronado, California, the Pacific air moved cold and damp through an open stairwell. Outside, the ocean was restless. Inside, the building was quiet in the way large places become quiet, just before they are disturbed forever. A young woman had checked in a few days earlier, under a name that was not her own. She carried a small suitcase. She asked for a room facing the sea. Now she lay at the base of an outdoor staircase, her body angled toward the sand, a single gunshot wound, tearing through the stillness of the dawn. Nearby, there was no struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken railing, just wood, salt air, and the sound of waves hitting the shore below the hotel's wide verandas. When staff finally stepped outside and saw her there, the resort that had been built for rest and escape became something else entirely. Newspapers would later argue about what happened on those steps: suicide, murder, an accident dressed as something darker. But none of those arguments explain the more unsettling question. Why did this moment happen here, inside a place designed to promise safety, anonymity, and calm? To understand why a woman could arrive at this hotel under a false name and never leave it alive, we have to go back to the dream that built these walls in the first place. This is the story of Hotel del Coronado, the Victorian wooden resort on the beach in Coronado, California, and the woman whose last days inside it still hang over the place. It is also the story of what happens when a building is designed for escape, then becomes a container for questions. In the late 1800s, the promise here is simple. You arrive by the water. You breathe salt air. You rest. You do not have to explain yourself. The Del is built to make that promise feel real, with wide porches, long hallways, bright public rooms, and stairs that open to the sea. But this episode is not really about luxury. It is about a dream, a building, and the cost of turning life into legend. A young woman can step through the lobby under a false name and be treated like any other guest, because this place is built to let people disappear for a while. Then, on a cold morning in November 1892, she is found dead on an exterior staircase leading toward the beach. From that moment on, the hotel carries two lives at once. One life is sunlight, weddings, presidents, and movie stars. The other life is a locked memory, a rumor, and a question nobody can settle. When you reach the end, you will understand how a place built for comfort can also market a mystery, and why the building always outlasts the people inside it. To see how that contradiction was built, we have to go back to the beginning. In the late 1800s, Southern California is still being invented in the American imagination. Coronado is not yet a postcard. It is a narrow strip of land, quiet, wind-swept, and separated from San Diego by water. What draws attention here is not industry or trade, but the idea of escape. Wealthy Americans, exhausted by eastern cities and long winters, begin looking west for air, light, and distance from scrutiny. Railroads and steamships make that distance feel manageable. Land promoters understand something important. If you build beauty far enough away, people will project their hopes onto it. Coronado becomes that blank surface, a place where the rules of daily life seem softer, where names matter less than appearances, where being seen resting is more important than being known. This is the social soil that allows a resort like Hotel del Coronado to exist. It is born not out of necessity, but desire. The desire to pause, the desire to be untouched by the noise of the mainland. In this world, leisure is not just rest, it is status. And status needs a stage that looks effortless. The beach provides the illusion of openness. The distance provides the illusion of safety. Guests arrive believing that whatever they leave behind will stay behind the water. That belief is powerful. It allows strangers to live side by side without questions. It allows silence to feel polite instead of suspicious. And it allows a woman to arrive alone, carrying a small suitcase, and not be asked why. Long before any tragedy, the conditions for disappearance are already in place. The dream of California is not about finding yourself. It is about being briefly unaccountable. In this same period, the American resort is becoming something new. It is no longer just a place to sleep. It is a social machine. Guests arrive not only to rest, but to be observed resting. Hotels like this are designed to blur boundaries. Private sorrow stays private. Public elegance stays visible. Staff are trained to notice comfort, not questions. This matters. In the late 1800s, reputation is fragile, especially for women. Travel alone invites suspicion almost everywhere else. Here, it does not. At a seaside resort built for discretion, solitude can be explained as refinement. Silence can be explained as taste. A guest can arrive with a small suitcase, speak little, keep to herself, and still fit the scene perfectly. That is not an accident. It is part of the design. The wide hallways keep people moving. The verandas keep them visible. The constant sound of the ocean softens everything else. There is always motion, always air, always somewhere to look that is not another person's face. This environment does not erase pain. It simply makes it easier to carry without being interrupted. For many visitors, that is the appeal. You can arrive with something heavy and not be asked to set it down. You can stay anonymous without being invisible. This is the version of California being sold at the time, a place where personal history feels optional, where no one insists on knowing why you came, long before any investigation, long before any headlines. This system is already in place. It protects guests from judgment. It also protects secrets. When a tragedy later happens inside such a space, the question is not only what occurred, but how much was allowed to remain unseen by design. By the time a woman like Kate Morgan decides to travel west, the choice already carries weight. Records from the period tell us very little about her early life, and that absence matters. In the late 19th century, many personal stories are not preserved, especially the stories of women who move alone, change names, or step outside the expected path. What we do know is the pattern: a long journey by rail, a final crossing by boat, a destination chosen not for work, but for distance. California offers that distance. It offers the chance to arrive without context, to be new without explanation, to exist briefly without being attached to family, town, or past mistakes. For someone carrying private pressure, that promise can feel like relief. The resort culture of the time does not ask why you came. It asks only whether you can pay and whether you wish to be comfortable. That silence can feel protective. It can also feel final. When a woman arrives alone with a small suitcase, checks in under a different name, and asks for a room by the sea, the act is not dramatic. It is practical. It is careful. It suggests someone who wants control over the last details of her presence. Whatever brought her there is not recorded, but the structure around her is clear. The West allows reinvention. The hotel allows anonymity. Together, they create a space where a person can step out of their own life without resistance. That is not yet a tragedy. It is simply a decision. But it is the kind of decision that only makes sense in a place designed to let people arrive without being followed by their history. The Hotel del Coronado does not rise quietly from the sand. It is announced. Built almost entirely of wood at a time when stone signals permanence. The choice is deliberate. Wood is faster. Wood is flexible. Wood suggests warmth rather than authority. From a distance, the structure looks less like a fortress and more like an invitation. Towers lift above the shoreline, not to intimidate, but to be seen from the water. Rooflines angle and repeat, creating motion even when nothing moves. Wide verandas stretch outward, encouraging guests to linger in public rather than retreat into private rooms. This is architecture designed to be occupied visibly. Inside, the building continues that logic. Hallways are long and open, pulling people forward instead of closing them in. Staircases are not hidden utilities. They are central features, placed where bodies cross paths and eyes meet briefly before moving on. Light enters from many directions. Air moves constantly from the sea. The building never lets you forget where you are. You are near water, you are far from home, and you are surrounded by others who came here for the same reason: to pause, to be elsewhere, to feel unobserved while still being seen. This is not accidental beauty. It is planned behavior. The hotel teaches guests how to move, where to linger, and when to disappear. Public spaces feel generous. Private spaces feel temporary. You are not meant to settle in. You are meant to pass through gracefully. That is the promise being sold. Comfort without attachment, presence without obligation. The architecture supports that promise by reducing friction. There are few sharp transitions, few hard corners. Everything flows. When people describe the building as charming or romantic, they are responding to this softness. But softness can also dull attention. It can make silence feel normal. It can make absence harder to notice. In a place built to keep things moving, stillness stands out only when it is too late. Long before any tragedy, the building has already made a statement. This is a place where you are welcome to arrive lightly, stay briefly, and leave without explanation. As the resort grows, its spaces begin to sort people without announcing it. Certain rooms draw crowds, others remain quiet by design. Ballrooms and dining areas invite performance. Verandas invite observation. Private rooms offer retreat without permanence. This balance is intentional. The hotel does not want guests to disappear completely. It wants them to circulate, to be present enough to animate the place, but detached enough to avoid friction. Staff learn this rhythm quickly. They move along the edges. They keep services smooth. They protect the illusion that nothing heavy is happening here. In the late 19th century, this illusion is powerful. Many guests arrive carrying pressure from business, family, or reputation. The building offers relief by never asking them to explain themselves. You can be seen without being known. You can be surrounded without being interrupted. That atmosphere turns architecture into a kind of social agreement. Everyone pretends not to notice what does not fit. Long hallways make passing encounters brief. Open staircases allow movement without intimacy. Sound travels softly. Conversations dissolve into air and ocean. This reduces confrontation. It also reduces accountability. If something feels off, there is always another direction to look, another view, another reason to keep walking. Over time, this shapes behavior. Guests learn that privacy here is not enforced by walls, but by manners. You do not pry. You do not linger where you are not invited. You do not ask questions that break the spell. The hotel rewards those who follow these rules with comfort and ease. It gently discourages those who do not. In this way, the building becomes a filter. It does not cause harm. It simply removes resistance. That matters later. When a woman arrives alone, keeps to herself, and avoids attention, she is not violating any norm of this place. She is following it. The architecture has already made room for her silence. It has already taught everyone else to step around it. When people later ask how something could happen here without warning, the answer is uncomfortable. The warning signs did not clash with the environment. They blended into it. As the building settles into daily use, its meaning sharpens. This is not a home. It is a declaration. The Hotel del Coronado tells guests who they are allowed to be while they are here. You are not defined by where you came from. You are defined by how easily you fit the scene. The building rewards lightness. It favors those who arrive with few visible ties and leave few traces. Everything about the place reinforces that message. Rooms are elegant but interchangeable. Views matter more than walls. The sea is always present, reminding guests that the world is wide and their stay is temporary. This is architecture as reassurance. You can be here without consequences. You can pass through without explanation. For many, that feels like freedom. For the hotel, it is a business strategy. A place that promises reinvention attracts people who want to shed parts of themselves. It attracts money. It attracts attention. It attracts stories. Over time, the building becomes a reply to something older and harsher. The crowded cities of the East, the fixed expectations of family and class. The Dell answers with space and air, with openness instead of judgment, with surfaces that reflect calm, but there is a cost to that softness. When a building teaches people that nothing must be confronted, it also teaches them that nothing must be resolved. Pain can be postponed. Decisions can be delayed. Silence can be mistaken for peace. The hotel does not cause tragedy. It does not intend harm, but it creates a setting where unresolved lives can rest side by side without touching, where a person can arrive carrying a private ending and no one will interfere. In that sense, the building succeeds too well. It becomes a perfect container, not just for leisure, but for unfinished stories. Long before one woman steps onto an outdoor staircase, the architecture has already done its work. It has made disappearance feel natural. During its golden years, the Hotel del Coronado feels alive in a very specific way. Not loud, not chaotic, alive through repetition. Carriages arrive in the late afternoon. Guests step down in clean clothes made for display rather than comfort. Luggage moves smoothly. Names are checked quietly. By evening, the public rooms begin to glow. Lamps soften the edges of wood and glass. Music drifts without demanding attention. Conversations overlap but rarely collide. This is not a place for confession. It is a place for presentation. The rhythm is predictable, and that predictability is the luxury. Dinner unfolds at the same pace each night. Tables fill, glasses clink. Guests linger just long enough to be seen, enjoying themselves before drifting toward the verandas or the sea air. Children are guided away from adult spaces. Staff circulate with practiced ease. Nothing interrupts the flow. The hotel becomes a small world that runs on manners rather than rules. In this world, wealth is implied, not discussed. Power is suggested, not explained. Everyone knows how to behave because everyone is watching without appearing to watch. Over time, this creates a shared illusion that life here is smooth, that problems dissolve in salt air, that whatever waits beyond the water can be postponed. For many guests, these evenings blur together into memory. One night feels like the next. That is the point. The hotel offers continuity, a sense that this version of life could continue indefinitely. When people later describe the place as magical or timeless, they are responding to this carefully maintained sameness. It feels safe because it does not change. But sameness also flattens attention. When every evening looks right, it becomes harder to notice when something is wrong. In its golden age, the Hotel del Coronado succeeds at what it was built to do. It creates a setting where comfort feels permanent and endings feel distant. Inside the hotel, every space has a role, and every role reinforces the same quiet order. The dining room is where presence matters. You dress properly. You arrive on time. You sit long enough to be counted. Conversations stay light. Serious matters are postponed or taken elsewhere. The veranda belongs to observation. Guests watch the ocean. They watch each other. They participate without speaking. Children learn early where they are allowed to be loud and where they are not. Staff understand which doors to open and which moments to avoid. Upstairs, private rooms are not sanctuaries. They are pauses, places to change clothes, to rest briefly, to prepare for being seen again. Nothing in the building encourages isolation for long. Movement is gentle but constant. You eat, you stroll, you linger, you return. This circulation gives the house its pulse. It also spreads responsibility thin. No single room holds the whole story of a day. No single witness sees everything. Life here happens in fragments. That fragmentation is comforting. It makes days feel full without feeling heavy. Guests remember impressions, not sequences. Faces blur. Evenings repeat. For families, the hotel becomes a seasonal habit. For regular visitors, it becomes familiar enough to feel safe, but never intimate enough to demand honesty. This balance is crucial to the golden age. The hotel thrives because it never asks for more than performance. As long as you appear well, you are treated well. Whatever happens out of sight remains politely ignored. Over time, this trains everyone to accept surfaces as truth. If a table is full, the room is successful. If music is playing, the night is good. If no one complains, nothing is wrong. This way of living works beautifully, until it does not. When a life inside the building begins to slip out of rhythm, the system does not correct it. It absorbs it. It allows the unevenness to pass quietly from room to room, unseen. In a place built to keep everything moving, stillness can hide in plain sight. In this period, The house itself feels like a participant. It listens without reacting. It holds moments without judging them. Guests move through spaces that seem to remember nothing, even as they absorb everything. A laugh on the veranda fades into the ocean air. A disagreement in a hallway dissolves before it reaches the stairs. Joy and strain share the same rooms and are treated the same way, politely, briefly, without follow-up. This is why so many people later remember the hotel as gentle. The building never confronts you. It never asks you to explain. It simply allows the day to continue. Over time, that creates a powerful illusion of safety. If nothing stops you, nothing must be wrong. Families return year after year. Public figures arrive and leave without incident. The place accumulates prestige by avoiding drama. Its reputation grows precisely because nothing seems to happen here. That reputation becomes self-reinforcing. Guests arrive expecting calm. Staff deliver calm. Any disruption is smoothed over quickly, folded into routine, and forgotten. This is the golden age at its most convincing. A world where continuity feels guaranteed, where endings belong somewhere else. But the cost of that continuity is attention. When a building is trained to move past discomfort, it also moves past warning. The same grace that makes the hotel appealing makes it inattentive. The same openness that welcomes guests also disperses responsibility. By the time a life inside the building begins to narrow, there are no alarms built into the space. There are only exits. And when someone chooses one of those exits in a way no one expects, the house has no language to respond. It keeps its posture. It keeps its rhythm. It keeps offering the next evening, the next meal, the next view of the sea. In its golden age, the Hotel del Coronado perfects the art of continuity. It learns how to go on, no matter what is quietly slipping away inside. The first cracks do not announce themselves as danger. They appear as small adjustments. A guest stays in her room longer than expected. A meal goes untouched. A request is made, then withdrawn. In a place like this, none of that feels urgent. The Hotel del Coronado is trained to accommodate irregular rhythms without comment. Staff note changes quietly and move on. Other guests notice nothing at all. The building absorbs deviation the same way it absorbs sound, softly, without echo. For a woman staying alone, privacy is assumed to be intentional. Solitude is read as taste. Distance is read as refinement. In the late 19th century, these interpretations are especially forgiving. No one wants to intrude. No one wants to break the calm that everyone else is enjoying. This is how pressure slips through unnoticed. There is no single moment that demands intervention, only a series of small absences. Fewer appearances on the veranda, longer pauses between meals, a room that stays closed during hours when others move freely. Each sign is minor. Together, they form a pattern that the environment is not designed to confront. The hotel does not investigate, it waits. It assumes equilibrium will return on its own. That assumption is not careless. It is structural. The building is optimized for continuity, not interruption. Anything that threatens the flow is smoothed over rather than examined. This creates a blind spot. When someone begins to withdraw inward, the space around them does not resist. It offers cover. It provides exits. It makes retreat feel natural. By the time concern might be justified, the system has already normalized the distance. What looks like calm is actually thinning presence. What looks like discretion is actually erasure in progress. These are the hairline cracks, small enough to ignore, quiet enough to pass as manners, and dangerous precisely because they fit so well into the life of the house. As the days pass, the changes become slightly harder to ignore, yet still easy to excuse. A guest is seen less often in shared spaces. Her meals are taken at odd hours or not at all. Messages are left at the desk and go unanswered. None of this violates the customs of the house. At the Hotel del Coronado, irregular presence is normal. People come and go, schedules blur, staff are trained to respect boundaries, especially with women traveling alone. In the culture of the time, politeness outweighs concern. Asking questions risks embarrassment, intervening risks offense. So, distance is treated as preference rather than warning. This is how personal strain hides inside social grace. The environment encourages everyone to assume the best. If a door stays closed, it must be intentional. If someone avoids company, it must be a choice. The building supports these assumptions by design. There are many ways to move without being noticed, many routes that bypass attention, many moments when no one is expected to be anywhere in particular. Responsibility dissolves into the architecture. No single person feels authorized to act. No single signal feels strong enough to interrupt the flow. What might register as concern in a smaller space fades here into background variation. The hotel continues to perform normalcy perfectly. Lamps are lit, meals are served, music plays, life proceeds as scheduled. Within that smooth surface, something uneven is forming. The gap between presence and absence widens quietly. The woman is still there, but less and less part of the visible rhythm. This is not yet a crisis. It is a thinning, a narrowing of contact, and because nothing overt has gone wrong, the system responds with patience instead of attention. That patience is praised as courtesy. It is remembered later as restraint, but in the moment, it functions as delay. The longer nothing happens, the easier it becomes to believe nothing will. By the final stretch of her stay, the tension has nowhere left to go except inward. The signs are no longer isolated, but they still do not break the rules of the house. A guest may request a private breakfast. She may ask to settle her account early. She may walk the grounds at hours when the resort is quiet. None of this triggers alarm. At the Hotel del Coronado, calm behavior is assumed to be healthy behavior. The culture rewards composure. It mistakes control for stability. When a person grows more careful, more contained, more precise, the environment reads that as self-possession, not as distress. This is the last hairline crack. The moment when restraint begins to look like resolution. Staff see a woman who is polite, brief, and self-directed. Other guests see nothing at all. The building sees only continuity. Doors open and close. Lamps are lit and dimmed. The ocean keeps time. In a space designed to avoid confrontation, concern has no clear language. Everything still fits. That is what makes it dangerous. The house has taught everyone how to move past discomfort without touching it. So when the final decision forms, it does so inside a structure that will not interrupt it. The hotel offers privacy without isolation and movement without witness. It offers exits that feel ordinary. In hindsight, people search for a single missed signal, a moment when someone should have acted. But the truth is quieter. There is no sharp break, only a steady narrowing. The life inside the building grows smaller, while the building continues unchanged. This is how the system fails without collapsing. It does exactly what it was built to do. It preserves calm. It protects appearances. It keeps going. And by doing so, it allows a private ending to arrive without resistance. On the night that matters, the hotel keeps its habits. Lamps glow along the corridors. The ocean moves steadily beyond the verandas. Guests retire without incident. Nothing signals a break in routine. Sometime before dawn in November 1892, a woman leaves her room and steps into the open air. The exterior stairway is exposed to wind and salt. Wood underfoot is familiar to anyone who has walked the grounds before. This is not a hidden place. It is a passage. What happens there unfolds quickly and without spectacle. A single report carries across the quiet. When the body is discovered at first light, it lies where movement usually continues, near the base of the stairs, oriented toward the beach. There are no signs of struggle, no damaged railing, no witnesses who can place another person nearby. The building offers no explanation. It only offers facts. A wound, a location, a time that cannot be narrowed further. Within hours, the questions begin. Was it self-inflicted? Was it an attack? Did someone follow her into the open? Each possibility fits parts of the scene and leaves others unresolved. The hotel responds by doing what it knows how to do. It closes ranks. It cooperates formally. It restores order. Rooms are cleaned. Guests are reassured. The day resumes. In the logic of the house, the event is contained. A tragedy can happen anywhere. This one happened here. That is all the building admits. But the staircase does not disappear. The exposure remains. Wind moves through the same space. People continue to pass by. Over time, the exact details harden into disagreement rather than clarity. Accounts diverge. Motives are proposed and withdrawn. Evidence is interpreted and reinterpreted. The truth does not settle. What remains constant is the setting. The place where a life ended stays ordinary, and that ordinariness becomes unsettling, because it suggests that the final act did not require secrecy or chaos. It required only a moment when the system would not interfere. In a house built to preserve calm at all costs, that moment arrived quietly. And once it did, there was nothing in the structure that could stop it. In the hours that follow, the focus shifts from what happened to how it will be explained. Authorities arrive and move with caution, shaped by uncertainty. Statements are taken, distances are measured, timelines are proposed, then softened. Nothing is conclusive. The woman had checked in under a false name. Her past is fragmented. Her reasons for being here remain unclear. That ambiguity spreads quickly. It fills the gaps where facts should be. The investigation proceeds, but it never settles. Each conclusion carries a condition. Each theory leaves something unaccounted for. Suicide explains the solitude, but not the positioning. Murder explains the wound, but not the absence of struggle. Accident explains the setting, but not the weapon. The house offers no answers. It absorbs the questions and keeps operating. Guests watch from a distance. Rumors form quietly, then retreat behind polite conversation. No one wants to linger too close to the event. The culture of the place encourages forward motion, so the unresolved becomes something to step around rather than confront. The hotel resumes its role as host. Newspapers print careful language. Officials avoid definitive claims. Over time, the case loses urgency without gaining clarity. It drifts into the category of things that happened but were never finished. The staircase remains part of the daily route. The room is reassigned. The name fades from records. What persists is doubt, not loud or dramatic, just present, suspended between explanations. This uncertainty becomes its own legacy. It is less disturbing than a clear crime and more haunting than a closed case, because it suggests that the truth may not have been missed, but diluted, spread thin across too many possibilities. In a system designed to restore order quickly, ambiguity is not solved. It is managed, and once managed, it becomes permanent. As the story settles, the hotel makes a final adjustment. It does not deny what happened. It simply reframes it. The event is spoken of carefully, if at all. It becomes a reference rather than a rupture. Guests ask. Staff redirect. The name is remembered in fragments, then mostly forgotten. What survives is not a conclusion, but an atmosphere. The sense that something unresolved passed through and never fully left. Over the years, accounts drift toward the language of presence rather than proof. A feeling on the stairs, a chill in the corridor, a door that seems heavier than it should be. These details replace investigation because they are easier to carry. The house allows this shift. It absorbs tragedy and releases story. In doing so, it protects itself. A mystery can be hosted, a verdict cannot. By letting the ending remain open, the building avoids responsibility while gaining identity. The tragedy becomes part of the experience rather than a threat to it. This is how the final act completes itself, not with justice or certainty, but with integration. The death is folded into the rhythm of the place. The staircase is no longer only a site, it is a symbol. The woman is no longer only a person. She becomes a figure shaped by absence. The hotel continues to function, and that continuation becomes its argument. Nothing here stops because of one life. Everything adapts. In that adaptation, the meaning shifts. What began as a personal ending turns into a shared unease that never demands resolution. This is the quiet conclusion, the moment when tragedy loses its edges and becomes a background presence. It is no longer asked to explain itself. It is simply allowed to be. And, in a structure built to last, that allowance is enough. The system survives intact, the questions remain, and the place moves forward, carrying both. After the investigation fades from headlines, the building enters its longest phase, continuation. Ownership stabilizes, management changes hands, policies modernize, None of this requires erasing the past. The Hotel del Coronado learns to live with it. The room where the woman stayed is folded back into inventory. The staircase remains part of the route guests photograph and pass through. Time does what it always does in successful places. It smooths sharp edges without removing the shape beneath. New generations arrive without context. They experience the space first and the story later, if they hear it at all. What matters is that the house does not resist this layering. It allows memory to settle lightly. As tourism grows and culture shifts, the unresolved death becomes an anecdote rather than an interruption. It is repeated in guidebooks and whispers, framed as curiosity instead of warning. This is not neglect, it is strategy. A place that lasts must absorb loss without letting it halt motion. The hotel continues to host presidents and premieres and weddings. Laughter returns to the verandas. Music carries across the lawn. The same architecture that once permitted quiet withdrawal now supports celebration. That adaptability is the real inheritance. The building proves that it can survive, meaning changes. What began as a private end does not threaten the future because it is never allowed to dominate it. Instead, it becomes one thread among many. The past is acknowledged, then placed at a respectful distance, close enough to intrigue, far enough to function. Over decades, this balance hardens into identity. The hotel is known not despite the story, but alongside it. Tragedy is no longer a flaw. It is texture, something that adds depth without demanding action. In this way, the afterlife of the place is not haunted. It is curated. The building remains open, profitable, admired, and the question of what truly happened recedes into a softer form. Not solved, not forgotten, simply carried forward as part of a larger continuity that values endurance above resolution. As the decades turn, the story acquires a new function. It is no longer a problem to manage. It becomes an asset to shape. The unresolved nature of the death is carefully preserved, not clarified. Certainty would end conversation. Ambiguity keeps it alive. The hotel learns this instinctively. Guests mention hearing something, feeling something. Staff listen without confirming or denying. The language stays soft. Possibility without assertion. Over time, the figure of the woman detaches from the facts of her life and binds itself to the building instead. She becomes less a person and more a presence. This transformation is subtle but deliberate. The hotel never claims a haunting. It allows others to do so. That distance protects credibility while inviting fascination. The mystery becomes part of the experience economy, not foregrounded, but available. A story you can opt into, a whisper you can repeat. This is how the afterlife evolves from history into brand. The building does not exploit the tragedy openly. It absorbs it quietly and lets curiosity do the work. The same staircase that once raised questions now anchors a narrative guests seek out willingly. What was once an unresolved end becomes a beginning for countless retellings. Each version softens the edges further. Fear turns into intrigue. Intrigue turns into tradition. The original uncertainty remains untouched, but its emotional weight shifts. It is no longer heavy, it is atmospheric. In this way, the system completes its adaptation. The hotel proves it can transform disruption into continuity. A death that once threatened order now reinforces it by adding depth. The building remains respectable, elegant, profitable. The story remains unfinished, but safely contained. This balance is not accidental. It is learned behavior. Over time, the hotel understands that survival does not require answers. It requires control of tone, control of pacing, control of what is allowed to linger without demanding resolution. And so, the afterlife continues, not as a shadow, but as a feature, integrated, monetized, and carefully kept just out of reach of certainty. In the end, the afterlife settles into something quieter and more durable than rumor. The hotel stands as proof that endurance can outlast explanation. Renovations come and go. Wings are updated. Standards rise. Yet, the original structure remains legible beneath the polish. Wood still creaks. Sightlines still guide movement. The staircase still opens to air and horizon. The place remembers how it was built to function, and it keeps doing that job. What changes is not the building, but the way people relate to it. Visitors arrive with expectations shaped by stories, then leave with impressions shaped by experience. Most feel nothing unusual. That absence becomes part of the narrative too. It reassures. It normalizes. It allows the mystery to remain optional. The hotel does not demand belief. It accommodates it. This flexibility is the final evolution. A system that once prioritized discretion now masters coexistence. Past and present share space without conflict. The tragedy neither defines nor disappears. It rests. That resting is important. It prevents escalation. It prevents closure. It keeps the balance intact. Over time, the story becomes a lens rather than a wound. It offers a way to think about how places absorb lives and continue without them. How institutions learn from moments of failure without admitting fault. How elegance can be a form of control. The Hotel del Coronado survives not because it answers questions, but because it manages them. It sets boundaries around curiosity. It offers beauty first and context second. In doing so, it protects its future while honoring its past just enough to remain credible. The afterlife is complete when nothing more needs to be said. The building does not speak. It allows others to speak for it. And as long as those voices remain varied and unresolved, the place remains powerful. Not haunted in the obvious sense, but charged with the knowledge that something meaningful ended here and the world did not stop. That knowledge lingers lightly. It does not interrupt vacations or celebrations. It simply exists alongside them. In a structure designed to last, that coexistence is the ultimate achievement. The hotel moves forward. The questions move with it. Neither asks the other to leave. Today, if you walk through the gates of the Hotel del Coronado, you arrive without urgency. The driveway curves gently. The facade opens wide. The ocean is still doing what it has always done. You pass through spaces designed to welcome, not to warn. The lobby breathes. Light moves across polished wood. Voices rise and fall. Nothing points directly to what happened here in November 1892. And yet, the building remembers. As you move along the corridors, you feel how the house teaches you to keep going. Corners soften, sightlines extend. There is always another place to stand. Another reason to move forward. If you find the exterior staircase, it looks ordinary. Weathered by air, framed by horizon, people walk past without slowing. This is where the distance between history and presence becomes thin. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just quiet. The past does not interrupt the present. It sits beside it. That coexistence is the lesson this place offers. Wealth built this house. Care preserved it. Systems protected it. But none of that prevented loss. The tragedy did not arrive because the building failed. It arrived because the building worked exactly as intended. It kept things smooth. It respected privacy. It avoided disruption. Over time, that same discipline allowed the story to be absorbed without collapse. You can stay here and feel nothing unusual, or you can stay here and feel a subtle weight. Both experiences are valid. The house allows both. That is its power. It does not force meaning. It contains it. As you leave, the question is not what happened on the stairs. The question is simpler and harder. What do we ask our institutions to do for us? Do we want them to see us, or do we want them to let us pass unnoticed? Comfort and protection often look the same until they are tested. This place endured by choosing continuity over clarity, by valuing calm over confrontation, by letting questions linger rather than demanding answers. The walls still stand, the guests still come, the ocean still moves, and somewhere between those facts, the story remains. Not as a warning sign, not as a ghost, but as a reminder that buildings outlive people, and systems outlast moments. What they carry forward is not truth, but shape. And what we experience inside them depends on what we are willing to notice, while everything appears to be working just fine.